Okay, I'd like to introduce to you Tom Byler. Many of you have already met him, but I'm not sure if you know the whole story. Tom is the director of the Water Resources Department. He served there for 7 years. And prior to that, he was actually the OWEB director for 9 years. And before that, he was the Natural Resources Policy Advisor for 2 governors, Kulongoski and Kitzhaber. He was also the Legislative and Policy Coordinator earlier at Water Resources. And I actually remember Tom way back when he worked with Representative Chuck Norris from Portland, the Colonel. I think that was the 80s, but I probably have severely aged both of us already by saying that. So with that, I will turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Jan. It was the mid 90s, just to be clear. That was 1995 when I worked for Chuck Norris, the retired Army colonel out of Hermiston. And he introduced me to water issues. And I was glad to meet Jan during that time. Thank you for the invitation.
So, Tom, I'm not hearing you. Is anyone else having that same problem, or is it just me?
I can hear him.
I can hear him.
Yep, I can hear him too.
Carrie, can you hear?
Yep, I can hear. Yes.
I wonder if Jan's having troubles with her audio. Can you hear me, Jan? Well, I'm gonna keep going. It sounds like the rest of you can hear me and hope that Jan can get her audio fixed. I do, maybe while she can't hear, I do want to just celebrate and recognize Jan, who has been nominated by Governor Brown to serve on the Water Resources Commission, our public body that oversees the Water Resources Department. And her confirmation hearing is next week. So I'm very excited about that and look forward to having her working and involved in water policy issues again. Thank you everyone for the invitation. I am going to pull up a PowerPoint here in just a second. And while I'm doing it, I'm going to start off with an apology. And the apology is really around, I'm going to be flying through a lot of stuff really fast. There's just a whole lot of content. Hopefully you can see that screen. I'm going to get the PowerPoint going there. If someone can give me a signal that they can see that, that would be great.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to be moving through a lot of stuff. There's a lot happening in water right now. And so I apologize. I'm going to be flying at a high level, at high speed, and not going very deep on anything. But my goal is to kind of touch on a lot of the stuff that's happening, so you get the full range of things that are happening. And feel free to follow with me or any of our staff at the department if you want more specifics around any of these issues. Or if we have time for questions today, we'd be happy to take those as well, or I'd be happy to take those. Just to start off real quickly, the Water Resources Department is the state agency charged with managing the use of water. And we try to do so in a way that balances the needs for in-stream values as well as out-of-stream values. And it's based on a system of water rights. And our water laws go back quite a long way. The statutes were first introduced and promulgated by the Oregon legislature in 1909. There have been many changes since then. You can see in the picture on the bottom of the page, the state water code in 1916 versus 2015. Suffice it to say, it hasn't gotten smaller. It's gotten a lot bigger. It's a complicated area of the law. And there are a lot of nuances to it, both in terms of statute and rule, given that its origins of these laws took place over many, many decades. There's also a lot of case law. Water's a very important resource, as you all know, and there's people care about it deeply and pursue their interests very carefully around water issues. Probably the main point here is our foundation of water law is based on a seniority system called the prior appropriation doctrine. It is the same system, or roughly the same system, that 20 Western states in the United States utilize to manage the resource. And it's essentially a seniority system. So the oldest rights have the greatest ability to be able to use water in times of water scarcity. Well, so we've had our code, started issuing water rights under our code in 1909, but there are uses that predate the 1909. We have water rights that go back to the 1850s. And considering all those rights that have been issued over time, where's the resource at currently in terms of surface water and groundwater? Well, on the map on the left notes that in August, water is generally, or is not available other than areas like the main stem of the Willamette. All of the kind of taupish color in that map means that water is not available for new water rights. That is, that's true primarily in July and June and early September, the months when people need water the most, the dry season and when it's warmest. Water rights have been fully allocated for surface water. In the surface water really was started to become fully allocated really in the mid 20th century in many areas, especially the dry parts of the state. And it's around that time when people started to shift to groundwater to meet their new water supply needs. And we have a lot more to learn about groundwater than surface water. And I'll talk about that in a little bit later. But the map on the right reflects kind of the conditions of groundwater. And the really dark brownish red areas are areas where we've got declines that are serious and we are not issuing new water rights. So you can see that that's parts of the Willamette Valley, Northeast Oregon, and Southeast Oregon. You can also see red areas, including the Klamath, the Rogue Basin, and the Deschutes. These are areas of concern for us because we're starting to see signals that those groundwater resources are not as sustainable as we would like them to be. So suffice it to say, in terms of water availability for new uses of water, it's a closing window or it's a closed window, and it's much more difficult to get new water rights than it was in the past. Combine that with the conditions that we're seeing on the ground. Drought is a pretty frequent occurrence now. It's unfortunate but true. This map reflects the drought conditions under the U.S. Drought Monitor for Oregon as of late September of this year. All of Oregon was in drought, some intensity level of drought. The darker the color, the more intense the drought. And these conditions are really severe. And I think you all either lived through this or saw indications of the severity of the drought, had massive implications on water use in the Klamath Basin, the Deschutes Basin, where districts were shut off historically early in the season for them, and just lots of dry wells for domestic water users as well. So it's very difficult situation, and as we see more and more drought years accumulate, that combined with the uses that we already have in the system creates some real challenges for us going forward. Another big challenge is the prospect of climate change. We may be seeing some of those signals pretty strongly now and this year, in fact. This series of maps here show the different types of conditions, both historically and projected under climate change scenarios. The historical map on the top left shows in green areas that were rain dominant, in red areas that historically were mixed rain and snow, and in blue areas that were snow dominant. And you'll note this map shows the Pacific Northwest, including parts of Southwest Canada, Idaho, Montana, Washington, Oregon. But note that historically, we have a lot of red and green in our state. Green in the west, not surprisingly, a lot of red in terms of mixed snow and rain in the Cascades to the far reaches of Eastern Oregon. Then you'll look at, under the climate change projections, how the hydrograph changes. In the 2020s, you start to see more green show up in Eastern Oregon, and the 2040s even more, and the 2080s projecting out very, very few and limited mixed rain snow areas. That has significant consequences if that plays out. It's all a crystal ball at this point, but we seem to be getting signals that suggest that we may be heading in that direction with some of the temperature issues that we've been dealing with in recent years. And that changes the hydrograph significantly. It impacts water supplies and habitat, in particular by eliminating snowpack or reducing snowpack significantly, or having that snowpack melt off much earlier in the season than we are accustomed to. So all of those factors are important for us to weigh and balance in terms of how do we meet Oregonians' needs for water going forward. And when I talk about needs, I mean it writ large, both for the economy, irrigation, people's livelihoods, industry, community water suppliers, drinking water, water for fish and wildlife and healthy ecosystems. Water touches everything, and it's important to all living things. And we are reaching a point where we've got some really tough decisions that we're wrestling with around how we manage the resource and how we get it to the places it needs to be at the right time. The state of Oregon is in the last 10 years or so has been taking some meaningful steps forward. First of all, by adopting the integrated water resources strategy, first in 2012 and then 2017. Another iteration will be coming up of that. It's a very high level strategic document that helps set the stage and kind of connect dots for water and in its various and the various sectors that it intersects with, whether it's water in the economy, water in industry, water and land use, water and energy, water in the environment. All those issues are covered, and there are high-level recommendations associated with the IWRS. More recently, our agency has developed a strategic plan to help us prioritize work under the IWRS, and with a very kind of simplistic focus of modernization of our policies, a greater emphasis on being future-oriented in our work with communities, and with an inward look towards making sure our staff have the training and tools available so that we can be the best we can be going forward in serving the public. Another big element that has occurred in recent years, and it is, in my view, kind of takes some subcomponents of the integrated water resources strategy, is the 100-year water vision. It was initiated, before the pandemic. It's hard to track time anymore, but before the pandemic, Governor Brown and the Water Resources Department, OWEB, and a lot of others engaged in some really important community conversations around, really kind of focused around infrastructure as a way to have the conversation, knowing that in Oregon we have lots of built systems that support the delivery of water for various needs, whether it's for a city or municipality, an irrigation district, or a domestic well. There are all these systems that we've built over time. Many of them are aging and in need of repair and further investment. And the state's not in a great position to invest in water, and at least hasn't demonstrated that over time. The other part of infrastructure that I want to make sure I mention is that the natural infrastructure, and how natural systems and the water that flows through those systems are also extremely important to serving communities around the state. The 100-year vision led to many conversations that were important. And what I want to convey to you on that is that I think that the IWRS and the water vision really elevated the conversation around water. And that was that was important because it really helped move the ball in terms of getting the legislators' attention around water issues. And this 2021 legislative session is what I want to talk about next, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that came out of the 2021 legislative session that's relevant to water. And I think that the IWRS and the Water Vision were really catalytic in helping to develop the interest and awareness among policymakers around water issues. So here I go. Fasten your seatbelts. There's a lot to cover. In terms of policy changes, I'll note House Bill 2145. This was the second step of our priorities around our strategic plan to modernize our programs. In 2019, we modernized our dam safety program. In 2021, it was our well construction statutes. And so there's a whole host of things that we've done there in terms of changes around continuing education for well drillers to make sure that those folks who are drilling the wells have the skill and knowledge that we would expect for someone undertaking that type of activity on a public water supply, and making sure that we are having timely inspections of wells that are being drilled, as well as a number of other elements. If you're interested in this issue, be aware that there's going to be probably numerous rulemakings that will come out of this as we begin to implement the statutes and make sure that we update our rules accordingly. Senate Bill 130 has to do with irrigation district temporary transfers. It extended the sunset date for this program, which has been in play for some time. And in essence, it is allowing districts to go through a internal process around transfers, kind of minimizing the state agency process for temporary transfers that are within district boundaries. So that program is continuing to get test driven in a number of districts around the state. House Bill 2244 has to do with automatic stays. Under Oregon water law, if we issue a final order, there is, in certain circumstances, the ability for one to file a petition for judicial review in orders and other than contested cases. And we have seen in recent years some, especially in the Klamath Basin, when a junior water right holder is regulated off, we will issue an order to that end. And we've seen some junior water right holders petition for judicial review. And the automatic stay provision in our law provides that order is automatically stayed until it is dealt with by the court, the local circuit court. Well, that can take a long, long time. And when we're regulating water, that time is pretty valuable to any senior user who is not able to receive their water because of that automatic stay. So this has been an issue that's had a lot of discussion in the legislature in recent years. 2244 provided some clarity around the timing in which the circuit court would hear a case in which the Water Resources Department would deny an automatic stay. It provides some clarification around service, and it also provides some clarity around, the third point is going to escape me. Notice to the senior water right holder. House Bill 3103, transfers of stored water. This provides some corrective action by the legislature on a reinterpretation of the law that the department did a few years ago, based on advice from the Department of Justice, that prohibited our ability to be able to do transfers of stored storage water rights. And that has been an issue with some contention as well in the legislative arena. But this session, House Bill 3103 was passed, which allows and authorizes and provides clarity around the ability for one to make a transfer of the type of use of a stored water right. In other words, the way stored water rights work is a reservoir will have uses assigned to that reservoir right. And then one can apply for a secondary water right to use water under that reservoir right, to pull water out of the reservoir essentially and use it for a beneficial use. That secondary use is limited to the use that's assigned to that storage right. And if the storage right is only for irrigation purposes, then you cannot use a secondary right for municipal purposes, for example, unless you can change the character of the use of the storage right. And so we now have the ability under statute to do that, and we'll be doing some rulemaking associated with that issue. House Bill 2298 has to do with environmental restoration weirs in closed basins of the state, I believe. And this is really an ODFW issue, but we will be paying attention to it from the standpoint that making sure that however those weir placement is approached, that it complies with water law and doesn't create any injury to any existing water users. There was also a very significant investment in water over the course of or during this biennium, over $530 million invested in water-related efforts. Most of that funding went to specific projects, drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure, increased safety and resiliency types of projects, public works to replace and repair water infrastructure, also dollars for data collection and modernization of technology, money for water quality improvements, and then some money related to the water vision and some other items that I'll touch on here shortly. Breaking that down a little bit, and by the way, the $538 million didn't all come through the Water Resources Department. It went to many agencies, Business Oregon, DEQ, Department of Ag. There were a number of agencies that that money was funneled through, so it's not exclusive to the Water Resources Department. Important things I wanted to highlight that we received in our budget. House Bill 2018 provides us a lot more capacity to be able to move on developing groundwater budgets and basin studies. Up until a few years ago, we only had 3 basin studies, which were comprehensive, relatively up-to-date scientific reviews of the status of water resources in a particular basin. We have that up until recently. We've had that in the Klamath Basin, the Deschutes Basin, and parts of the Willamette. In recent years, we've received some funding for this, and we've been able to, we've almost completed a study in Harney County. We're initiating another study in the Walla Walla, but there's a lot more to do. And so 2018 has provided some money for us to do in the short term. Some groundwater budgets will be a little more simple assessments of what surface water and groundwater we think is assets, if you will, are available in communities. And then that will set a foundation for more thorough basin studies across the state. That information will be extremely helpful because it will help people with decision-making and planning going forward and trying to figure out their water future. We also have under 2018, we'll be performing through contract a statewide consumptive water use and evaporation assessment for all major reservoirs. We'll be expanding our groundwater level monitoring network, so we'll have better data to track groundwater levels over time. We also have a big investment in water data collection equipment, and we'll be issuing a report on water use measurement this biennium. In addition, this is a business case for water. We'll be contracting out with an expert during this biennium to essentially do an economic analysis around water. This is one of the things that came out of the 100-year vision conversations around the need to better inform policymakers and the public about just how important water is, both in terms of the value that it provides communities today, but also the risks associated with not investing more into water, both in terms of drinking water and water supplies, and again, for a broad array of uses that lead to healthy and vibrant communities. So we received some money for that. We'll be working on a contract this biennium to have that report done by the end of the biennium. We also received $4 million to do dam safety flood methodology, inundation and dam analyses. These will also be primarily contracted out. We did receive some positions on this, but this is also extremely important in the context of climate change and severe weather. We have over 900 dams that are subject to our dam safety program. These are non-federal dams, and many of them are aging. And we want to make sure that that we understand how those dams are performing in the context of the weather systems, I guess, and the climate change patterns that we're seeing today, and making sure that that is up to date. Some other items around policy work. We received some agency capacity to be able to work in the Willamette and the Deschutes basins, both really important areas with some significant and complex water issues. In the Willamette, we're going to be embarking on some pre-implementation work associated with the reauthorization of the uses of the 1.6 million acre feet of stored water behind the 13 federal reservoirs in the Willamette Basin. It's a lot of water, and we have a lot of work to do in terms of converting minimum perennial stream flows, which were established in the 1960s, to in-stream water rights, both in terms of technically how that will be done and the process that we'll use for that, and working with ODFW. I expect there to be a lot of public conversation around, increasing public conversation around management in the Willamette, which will look different once we're able to start using the stored water in the Willamette reservoirs for purposes other than flood control, irrigation, and fish management, which had been the exclusive uses in the past. IWRS update, we received some capacity for our next update. I'll give you a heads up that while we are due to have our update for the IWRS in 2022, we're likely to delay that, in part because there's a lot of important conversations that are happening as a result of the budget and legislative direction that I think will inform the next update of the IWRS. We want to have those conversations play out first, and then use those as a basis for our update. 3103, I mentioned this in terms of the clarity around the character of use of storage right transfers, but it also authorized us to form a work group to deal with the remaining issues around transfers of stored water pertaining to the location of the reservoir or the point of diversion that supplies water to the reservoir. The next point is a really big one I want to emphasize, and it really has, in my mind, a lot to do with the kind of the continuation of the conversations under the 100-year vision. One of the things that we hoped we could get moving in the February 2020 legislative session was the authorization to have a work group that could look at kind of how Oregon can best support water planning and best invest in communities around the state to help them with the planning and implementation of work that's needed to help them develop their future vision for water and then act on it. There are ways to do that today, but it's complicated, and I think the question that we were hoping to raise in 2020 during the short session was set a table where we could have a conversation about, is there a better way we could be doing this? Is there a better governance system, if you will, to do that? And the Regional Water Planning Work Group was authorized this session, and it's my hope that that effort serves that similar purpose. I know that Representatives Owens, Representative Helm, and Representative Reardon all are keenly interested in this issue and continuing those water vision discussions, and have been very active in working with myself and Oregon Consensus in trying to set up this work group, which I hope will be formally convened by early 2022. So stay tuned on that one. We also are charged with setting up a sustainable funding model work group to help us with our fee-based programs, which have struggled in recent years in terms of the funding keeping up with our increasing costs for our staff and our program. In terms of budget and legislation, other issues, we have a couple of different programs, one in the Harney Basin, $500,000, another $2 million program through House Bill 2145 that are really oriented to help domestic well owners. And one of the things that we're seeing more frequently are dry wells during drought. We're seeing dry wells because of over appropriation of groundwater. We're seeing well problems due to fire. The top picture on the top right shows you can see in kind of in the bottom center a well. This used to be in a shed. I think it was down in Southern Oregon, and there was a surprising number of wells were damaged through the fires of 2020. These are difficult, these sources of water are supplying domestic supply for people. It's expensive and takes time to fix those wells. And we're looking for better ways to provide some resources to the legislators, looking for better ways to supply resources to help folks who are put in that kind of situation. These two programs will be new to us, and we'll begin implementing them this biennium. In addition, in the Harney Basin, one of the potential ideas to help folks with groundwater management in that basin is to set up a conservation reserve enhancement program. We've been working with folks locally around that. The legislature provided funding to help do the startup. We still have to work through the federal process with the Farm Services Agency. I know we're working with the NRCS as well and trying to set that up. My hope is that that program will be online, probably not next year, but the year after. And third on this is an effort for granting agencies to make sure that the process they use and that the applicants who pursue grant funding go through a thorough community engagement as they develop their proposals. And so that'll be something that you'll see in rulemaking from the Water Resources Department and several other agencies. All right, we are getting closer to the finish line here, and I want to be sensitive to my time. We also have a charge to work with BIPOC communities and to really broaden and deepen our connections at the state level with underserved communities. And so the equitable water access and indigenous water resiliency effort were funds that were put forward by the legislature for my agency to do two things. One is to directly engage with BIPOC communities, and we're working with the Oregon Water Futures Project, and a number of members of that organization to kind of figure out how we can best engage going forward this biennium. We also were charged with these funds to do engagement with tribes. And we are in the process of setting up a state agency tribal task force. Notably, Governor Brown received a letter from all 9 federally recognized tribes requesting that kind of engagement. It was very fortuitous that we had some resources from the legislature at the same time. So this is another important conversation between the state and tribal interests around water. It will be broader than just the water use issues that my agency is concerned with. I'm sure it will deal with drinking water and water quality issues as well as fish and wildlife concerns from the tribes. But I'm very much looking forward to working with the governor's office and other agencies and standing that up and having that engagement, that important engagement. Lots of funding went to specific infrastructure projects, fish passage upgrades. We received $2.2 million, $2.2 million, or roughly $2 million for place-based planning to continue the pilot work we have there with 4 areas. We received additional funding for cost share for installing water use measurement devices with individual water users. We have a charge to set up a task force with interests in the Columbia River. That is going to be a bi-state, multi-tribe work group looking at main stem Columbia management and bi-state management in the Umatilla, Morrow County area, as well as the area north of the border. We also received significant dollars for our WRD's grant programs. So we're excited about that investment. By the way, if you've been looking at this picture, I apologize. It is the dam, Newport's dam, and this is underneath the dam, and you're starting to see some problems there. This was one of the projects that received, I think, $14 million from the legislature directly to help them move the ball forward in terms of replacing their structure, which is starting to show troubling signs of that could lead someday to failure. Okay, yes, there's more, and I'm going to get through this, so bear with me. We also received money for an increase of funding for our legal expenses. As a state agency, and the Water Resources Department is no stranger to lawsuits. We rely on the Department of Justice for our legal services. And we pay them based on whatever our needs are in any given biennium. For the last 10 years or so, our legal costs have greatly exceeded what has been budgeted for us. And it's caused some problems for us as an agency where we've had to tighten our belts in other program areas and not spend dollars. We've also had to go to the legislature a few times, which was not fun, believe me, to tell them that we need more money for attorneys. But this session, we got a boost of about $800,000 in our base budget. So that'll be included in our budget going forward. We also received money to work on our protest backlog. We have about 125 protests of various decisions that have been made by our agency that have been awaiting to go to contested case. And it's quite a lot. Most of those are for protests to in-stream water right applications, many of which are embarrassingly old and have been around for a while. But this money will be helpful. We just referred 27 protests to the Office of Administrative Hearings, which is a massive number, given that in recent years, we've been able to do maybe 2 or 3 contested cases in a biennium. So it's a big change for us, and it's going to be a big focus. We will be also working on our backlogs associated with water rights. We received some funds, some ARPA dollars for that. And if we can use those ARPA dollars for bringing on temporary staff, we expect that we'll be bringing on a fleet of staff to help us chip through some of our water right related workload. We have some IT investments. Hydro fees were increased this biennium. And we received funding for additional boots on the ground. I think 5 assistant water masters were included in our budget, which is fantastic. So that was a lot. I just want to say that it was a lot and quite frankly, a bit overwhelming for us. We're not a huge agency compared to some of the other natural resources agencies. And we've received a lot of new work. We're very excited about it. I think it's a game changer for us. And we're working hard to make sure that we're standing up these programs and recruiting carefully and thoughtfully for the long term. But it is a lot that we're dealing with. In terms of positions, just in this budget, this recent budget, we received 38 new positions. And just to give you some context, in a good year in the past, we might get 8 positions, 8 new positions, maybe 10 in a really good year, but 38 is just unheard of. And those 38 new positions combined with vacancies that we've had pending because we've had some budget constraints in recent years means that at the beginning of this biennium, we were facing about 70 positions that we needed to fill. And that is, we're making progress on that, but it is a full-time workload just for us to gear up and go through recruitments. It's been quite an effort. I think I'll leave that at that. I'll also just, in terms of what I've just articulated to you so quickly, we've kind of organized all of that into what we see as kind of 40 new tasks that the legislature has asked us to do, whether it's develop a new program for domestic well owners, a grant program for them, whether it's setting up the Harney CREP, or whether it's working on the various work groups and task forces that I mentioned. Each of those is a discrete task, and we have counted 40 of them as part of this new legislative budget and direction and bills. Just again, for context, in a typical year after a long session, we might have 5, 8, maybe 10 things to do, but not 40. So this is a very big deal. There's a lot that's been put. It's a great reflection of the legislature's interest and increasing interest in water. I'm excited about that. But there is a lot to do, and it's going to take us some time to put it all together. We're doing the best we can to recruit and fill positions and stand up new programs, but it is going to take time. So stay tuned and bear with us. I want to mention this, and I'm not going to go into detail on this, but I want you to see this document. This is a document that has been in discussions. I've been sharing with stakeholders, water stakeholders now for a few weeks. I'll be briefing the House Water Committee next week on talking through this document. And essentially what it is trying to do, this document was created by Maida Lofsgarden when she was still at OWEB, myself, and Representatives Helm, Reardon, and Owens, who continue to be very interested in water, as I mentioned before. And the real purpose of this table is to help people understand. There's so many moving parts that I've tried to convey to you. There's so much going on in water right now that we thought it was important to try to develop a one-pager that could help capture some of the important water conversations that we think are going to be happening over the course of this biennium. And so on the left-hand column is a list of the various things that are going to happen, ranging from the regional water planning and management work group that I mentioned earlier, the business case that I talked about, and our place-based planning work, our tribal engagement that I mentioned, the equitable water access. All those elements are listed there just so that people understand that those are discrete efforts that are going to, if not started already, that will be started probably early next year. And that we see that they are somewhat related and somewhat connected. We hope that they aren't duplicative, and we don't want them to be duplicative, knowing that all those projects, all those efforts really mean a lot of commitment of a lot of time of folks. And so we're trying to help people understand what's out there, how they feed into key objectives. That's the middle column. And then what we hope will be that those conversations will, in addition to supporting those objectives, that they will help inform the thought process and ideas for the 2023 legislative session, and ultimately for the update to the next integrated water resources strategy. So I'm going to be very brief here, and I know I'm probably about at my time. We've got a bunch of rulemaking that we need to do, and I'm not going to go through detail here, just in the interest of time. Maybe highlight a couple here for folks. Division 10, I want to note. This is, I mentioned earlier that we're increasingly concerned about the status of groundwater in different areas of the state. We have tools available to us when aquifers are really in poor shape and in steep decline. We can establish what are called critical groundwater areas, and we have a number of them around the state. Some in Northeast Oregon, some in the Willamette Basin, and some in other areas. The statutes were updated around critical groundwater areas actually a number of years ago. And our agency has not updated our rules to be consistent with those statutory changes. The reason we're updating the rules is because we intend and expect that we'll be engaging in updating or creating and establishing critical areas, potentially in the Harney, potentially in the Walla Walla, potentially in the Klamath Basin. And Division 10 will establish the process by which we would establish a critical area in a basin. So it's not the it won't make that it won't. Division 10 will not establish any critical areas by itself, but merely create the process by which a future designation can be made. There'll be some fee provisions in our hydro rules as well as our water right rules. I'm going to skip forward here, and I apologize again for being quick, but I know I'm bumping up against your next speaker. We'll be making a bunch of rule changes associated with House Bill 2145. This was the well construction modernization bill that I mentioned earlier. So there is a lot going on. We're excited about what's happening in water. Again, please note those water conversations. I can share with Jan the PowerPoint, so it can be distributed to you all so you can linger on some of these things a little bit more. And if you have follow-up questions after this event, please, again, don't hesitate to contact me or anyone at the department. A lot going on in water right now. I'll just close with that. And again, thank you everyone for the time today.
Thank you, Tom. We don't have much time for questions right now, so we'll do what Tom suggests and get the PowerPoint to you. And if you have any particular questions, just contact the appropriate person or Tom at the department. And thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
To get out there.
Indeed.
Thank you. We will move to our next presentation then, which is actually two district managers who are going to share some insight with us on project development. We've got Karen Stutzman from Polk County Soil and Water. And I'm looking for her. And we have Herb Winters from Gilliam. So I'm going to just turn it over to the two of you and not take any of your time.
Well, talk about feeling small and having some big shoes to fill. We're coming in at the end of the day after all of those amazing presentations by people who've been around for, well, thinking about what they're thinking about for a lot longer than me, that's for sure. So thank you for inviting us to talk about ways that soil and water conservation districts can develop programming in different ways. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is putting my PowerPoint up. To show. You can probably see this, the taskbar, can't you?
We don't see your screen yet, Karen.
You don't see it yet. Okay, hang on.
And also, we're really excited to hear from you.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. It's because I need to share my screen first. So you can, now you can see it, I think, right?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, thank you. So my name's Karen Stutzman. I'm the district manager for the Polk Soil and Water Conservation District. I've been here for about 8.5 years. And I first of all just wanted to thank OACD for giving my district the opportunity to participate today and for my board for giving me the time to be on the OACD board for my first full term. And just to let everyone know that being on the OACD board as a staff member over the last year has really helped me learn information about natural resource concerns that are going on around the state, and what's on the minds of the Oregon legislature. And it really helps inform me how to plan for my future planning here at the district and in my county. And it really helps to give us a competitive edge when we're going to apply for grants, because we're right at the heart of what's going on all around the state. So I would encourage any staff, any board members to join OACD, because it's a wealth of information. You learn a lot. So my presentation is going to be about building capacity with landowners and land managers and stakeholders. As a newer team of staff and a newer district manager, I'm always looking for ways to try to develop programming and get more involved in the community. And so in 2016, we had the beginnings of that happening for us. So who are we? So we're Polk SWCD, located in the Willamette Valley, and we've been established in 1966, and our team is it's a small district, although we do receive a tax base. We have staff of 5, district manager, a resource conservationist, a farm specialist. Then we share a small farms outreach coordinator, which is a really great position if anybody wants to try it, with the Oregon State University Extension Service. We share this position with Polk SWD, Polk Extension, and Marion Extension, because we all know that we share basically the same types of agricultural practices in the 2 counties, and it just makes more sense to reach a broader audience with one person. And then we just recently hired an outreach coordinator who will manage more of our fish and wildlife and more of our oak program, and getting into those urban and suburban communities that we do have too.
Hey, Karen, we are not seeing your slides moving forward.
I just moved it forward. Do you see my?
We're still seeing the main slide on your PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let's start this again.
We just see the title page, Salt Creek Collaboration.
Okay.
I think there's a little button up in the left-hand corner that says Start Slideshow, something like that.
Yeah, I got that.
Oh, okay.
So you
That's
don't.
the end of my knowledge.
I'm moving them forward. You can't see that?
No.
We see the title page, and then if you arrow down, we should see the next one, I think.
Yeah.
Karen, I think you're sharing the regular PowerPoint window and not the full screen window that's doing the slideshow.
Well, I am clicking on from the beginning. Let's see. I'm on slideshow. I'm clicking from the beginning. It's showing on my computer the whole screen.
So we do see the title page here. So if you want to go to the second one, just arrow down, and I think we'll see the second one.
Yeah, that's what I am doing, but I'm wondering why it's not showing it.
It's the Zoom goblins.
How about now?
Yep. Oh, that works.
Perfect. All right, well, so this is the slide I was just on, talking about where we're located, and then I was showing our staff. So it's me and then the rest of my staff there. And then I'll move on to the next page. So So in 2016, following an SIA process, which I think you all are familiar with, Oregon Department of Agriculture's SIA process, we had some land managers approach the district as well as NRCS and let us know about just extreme amounts of flooding that they were having in Salt Creek, which is the blue outlined area in the county map here. And it was 19,000 total acres being flooded, and the complaints were coming from the northern part of the county, just in this region. So we thought to ourselves, what were the things that we were hearing from the producers? And things they were telling us were that they were used to yearly flooding. Now it's more and more. Their tile lines were clogging because the creek had once been dredged back in the 50s, but it hadn't been allowed to be dredged anymore. And so everything had silted back in, topsoil was being washed away. The creek was coming much closer to farm buildings, threatening infrastructure, backing up almost to the highway, Highway 22, and crossing over a major highway that leads out to the coast. Gravel roads were becoming unsafe, and there was no localized or coordinated effort to clean anything out. And there was a lot of confusion around removal fill laws at the time. So the community, the land managers just didn't want to do anything at all. But they finally came to us. And so I just wanted to show you some of pictures that we took in the winter of 2016 through February of 2017. You can see the water's really coming up over the road. This blue arrow is really where the ditch channel is, and or part of the creek was flowing over to this part of a low gradient, flowing over the roads, washing the roads away. The county has had to fix this road many, many times. Then you can see that the channel itself is back in the back of this picture, but it's really flooding all the way across the fields, filling up the ditch channels next to the road, eroding away soil, topsoil, filling ditches to capacity, taking out infrastructure, coming very close to ag buildings, making it really difficult to travel on their major roads in and out of Salt Creek watershed, back to the highway. That's a FedEx truck there trying to get through the water. And so we thought to ourselves, how can we start to think about this problem? You know, we've got this information. What should we do? So we put together a steering committee with NRCS and ODA, the Yamhill Watershed Council, Commissioner Craig Pope, Oregon State University, and some land managers to start to think about what processes, mechanisms, and ideas that would ultimately help bring solutions for these landowners. We thought about putting together a collaborative style team to address the concerns, and started having steering committee meetings and to think about tools we could use to find solutions. So ultimately, we decided to move forward with no grant and just work collaboratively on our own by creating our own collaborative. We did look at the process through the place-based planning, but at the time, I think the grant process was on hold, and they were figuring out some more ways to make it more efficient. So finally, in 2018, we got down to the business of finding local champions out in the watershed, local land managers who would work through the process with us, the long haul. We thought we needed to find local farmers to be the lead because they would be the ones to tell the best story and to help. We wanted to help educate them along the way so that we were making sure that they were involved in the process to help the solution through to finish. We did hire Oregon Consensus to send out a survey of land managers in Salt Creek and of what their concerns were. We had several stakeholder engagement meetings at some farmers, some farmers, I'm losing the word, their shop, just where they could talk amongst themselves with no agency people around and let us know what they were thinking. And then we took that information and we drafted a questionnaire and mailed it to the residents of the whole watershed to help us define what next steps we should take forward. And the results of the questionnaire revealed that the area needed a lot more data and to form a study to work on updating infrastructure. And so this is the mailing that we sent out, and ultimately, you know, they really wanted people from the county to provide culvert replacement or drift removal or improve infrastructure. But the steering committee ultimately settled on starting an ag study so that we could look at the watershed conditions and farming practices and flow of water. So then that all happened through 17, 18, and 19. We met probably every 6 weeks or so, and it just took some time to really hone in on what we wanted to do. So in early part of 2020, the collaborative agreed to include Salt Creek in a stakeholder-driven ag study that utilized a variety of ecosystem components in the watershed in concert with landowner values, management activities, and external driving forces like the climate or population. And that we wanted the project to expand on current research that OSU was doing in Oak Creek, which is a watershed next to Corvallis, which is more of an academic study of the same kind of problems as water flows through the watershed. Then with the effects of 2019, things were really delayed, and we were just kind of at a stalemate, and but we still were able to come together and think about what the study should look like and what things did we have going for us already, and what the challenges would be moving forward. So we knew for this paired study, sorry, I'm a little out of step here. So we knew that if we wanted to use Salt Creek as part of a sister study with OSU, that we would, we already knew that we had to look at salmon and trout habitat to determine whether or not we had to worry about that in the study. We already had Salt Creek as a focus area. So we already were collecting information around it, and we already had the support of ODA. We already had cooperating producers that were willing to host research in the area. And so we knew we had already begun to think about the problem with our collaborative. And we had the support we needed to move forward. So in 2021, I don't know why I am extremely nervous right now, which is why I'm not following through with my presentation. I'm really sorry about that. I didn't think that I'd become this nervous this fast. We So during 2020 to 2021, when we weren't really able to get out as much into the watershed because of COVID-19, we did have a lot of conversations with our board and with OSU, and we purchased weather stations so that the SWCD could start to look at weather in different parts of the watershed. We purchased stream gauge equipment so that we could look at the water levels and stream flow. We purchased an air temperature. We wanted to look at stream and air temperature. So we put these loggers throughout the watershed. And we also wanted to do water quality testing. So we purchased a multi-parameter probe, which actually we're purchasing right now. But we had all these investments and we started to collect all of this information over the last 3-ish years. And we wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to fund more studies into the future so that we could collect a good baseline of information that we could share with legislators and other stakeholders and farmers in the area so they could have real-time data and real information about what was going on there, what was really causing the flooding. So we made a Derek Godwin and Carlos Ochoa, who are from the Oregon State University Water Resources Department, put together just this past August a meeting at the Farm Bureau where we had lots of stakeholders involved from different ag groups and wanted to talk about how our study was going and how we were collecting a lot of good information. And what we came about finding was that we had a lot of support from all of the ag groups to put together the next 5-year funding because the agreement that was made for Senate Bill 1010, I know it's not called that anymore. They want to call it the Ag Water Quality Program. They never established a baseline study. And so we were able to get another 5 years of support to do more studies in the area so we could have this baseline study so we can share information about what's really happening out in Salt Creek so that land managers could move forward. And just on November 8th, we got word of funding to move forward. And I think I'll just finish right there and stop embarrassing myself. So if you have any questions, please let me know and I'll try to answer them.
And maybe in the interest of time, we should have her go ahead and then we can have questions at the end for both of you, if that works.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, can everyone see my screen and hear me?
Both.
Excellent.
Good.
Great. Okay, thanks, Karen. Jan, yeah, I'm just, my name's Herb Winters, District Manager for Gillum SWCD. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the way the John Day Basin Partnership has really helped our district leverage funds from multiple funding sources. It's kind of, we've gone through, Karen's going through all that hard planning work right now. It's good work, but then it eventually leads to getting, getting more funding. And we've, when Karen and I were talking about this, it was, I can follow up and kind of talk about what happens when you get through all that planning and you're actually able to get, get some funds on the ground. So I'm going to chat real quick about our district, what the landscape scale efforts are, how that's affected our district capacity, and how that's also how we've had to change our program moving forward. And I'll try to not go too fast. Oops, sorry. Started too far back. Hope I don't make anybody sick. So here's Gillum County in north central Oregon, Columbia Plateau, John Day Canyons. Not very many folks in our area. Mostly rangeland, almost 30% dryland crop, grows soft white wheat around here. Mostly private, 12-inch average precip zone. And then we have 270 miles of steelhead habitat in the county. Here's our staff. This is an older picture, only one I could find without mass. We have 3.5 full-time employees. It's Christina Moore in the center. She's moved on. She was our former watershed coordinator. Just real quick on some resource concerns: upland plant health, native fish habitat with the mid-Columbia steelhead, and then of course water quality and quantity. So we'll look at some landscape scale efforts. The big one is the John Day Basin Partnership. And then we have the Lower John Day Working Group, which is a subgroup of the partnership. And then we have our Lower John Day Canyons Restoration Initiative, and then our ODA SIA in the 30-mile watershed. So yeah, what really opened the door for us is the district participating in the John Day Basin Partnership that started in 2014, really with the eyes on OWEB's Focus Investment Partnership Program. Got a lot of folks together, did a lot of planning, worked on a strategic action plan, focusing on summer steelhead and native fish habitat for the OWEB priority. Through that, we did an extensive prioritization process called Atlas. On the right is the map with the 3 geographies that the partnership decided were the highest priority using the Atlas process. And in 2019, the partnership was awarded $12 million over 6 years for native fish habitat by OWEB. And again, this kind of really started things off. So through that, we've been going through the FIP. This is the FIP geography in our FIP, which is 160,000 acres approximately. These are some of the projects we're working on. 3 TA grants, some restoration, monitoring, just kind of ramping up. We have pending projects due on the 15th this month. But again, this native fish habitat, we're focused on low-tech process-based designs, or BDAs. Most people know them, beaver dam analogs. Riparian planting, it's all about fish habitat. And for us, ultimately getting beaver back into these watersheds. We're hoping to get approximately $4 million over the 6-year period into this geography through OWEB. Then we have the Lower John Day Working Group, which is a place-based planning pilot. You see the map there of the pilots in the state. I won't go through the process, but basically we're planning as a community for water. And we started that in 2016. 17 organizations on this. Again, it's a subgroup of the partnership. Lots of meetings held. We've identified critical issues and some strategies moving forward. And the final report is soon to be reviewed. Our draft 5 report is soon to be reviewed by state agencies. So that's been quite the effort, and it's exciting to be getting towards the finish line. So here's a regional conservation partnership program. Ron spoke to it earlier this morning. These are just the 2019 projects that were awarded through our CPP. It's similar to the OWEB Focus Investment Partnerships, or high functioning groups of folks working together. And so we're lucky enough to use the FIP funds as leverage for our proposal. and we're awarded $3.9 million for more of an uplands focus, spring developments, juniper removal, fire breaks, and things like that. We had our first sign up this year, and that we had 31 folks come in to get contracts. And so we had a great participation. I think there's a few states that didn't have that many contracts in the whole state. So we're excited how our program is moving forward with the RCPP. And then on top of that, we worked with ODA to select the 30-mile watershed as our SIA. We were able to have one pre-COVID town hall meeting, interacting with some new landowners we hadn't seen before. So that was exciting. And it's also great that we have RCPP funding and FIP funding to help should any issues are identified through that process. This is just a program overlap, kind of looking at the multiple funding sources that we're working with and how they set geographically. You got the place-based planning in the green, and then our kind of in-stream and uplands funding source through RCPP, our native fish habitat through the FIP, and then really our capacity funding that we get from SIA to help inside the red there, which is 30-mile. So just kind of how everything lays in there. We're hoping to get 7.9 million in restoration on the ground by 2025. And this is just a quick diagram of kind of how that stuff lays out for us. Like I said, FIPs, riparian, in-stream, the RCPP, we have some beaver dam analogs going in-stream, and then a focus on the uplands. And then we have ODA dollars to help us with technical assistance. We'll just want to chat now about how that has affected our capacity as a district. We have looking at a significant amount of work, and we have 3.5 FTE. So we're trying to figure that out. We are not a taxing district. In the past, we've focused on ODA, OWEB, project management through open solicitation grants. We get some funding from our county for TMDL plan implementation, and we get funding for CREP technical assistance from BPA and OWEB. So here's how things have kind of changed with our landscape scale programs. With the partnership, it's less competitive than OWEB open solicitation. There's fewer implementers inside that geography for us. And there's also the work plan that really has projects already lined out. So it's we don't go through the whole OWEB application process there. Again, the place-based planning through the Lower John Day Working Group just helps us with continue our water planning in our area. And then through the RCPP, we get technical assistance for the implementation of the stuff in the uplands and BDAs. We also get technical assistance enhanced, which is an NRCS term, but we can use contracted services for UAS monitoring or BDA designs. And then that is not competitive. We just have a contract with NRCS for that. And then with ODA 30-mile SIA, sorry, that's where staff capacity. But we also decided that it was important for us to put in some contracted services for beaver dam analogs. As you'll see here in a little bit, that's kind of our major strategy moving forward. It's what we kind of have to do to go at the scale we're planning. So again, I'll go in here. I'm sorry, I'm going too fast, but I'll go into how we've changed our program, and it's been in three pretty big ways. I know getting consultants through contracted services is it's not a novel idea, but for us, we have the capability to do a lot of this stuff. We just do not have the time with the amount of work that we're trying to get on the ground. So we really shifted gears for contracted services, mostly with project design and a little bit with monitoring, using technology to lighten the load on staff through drones, and then really partnering with other agencies to get more done. since we just don't have enough people. So let's just talk about BDAs or low-tech process designs. With the funding we have through the FIP and the RCPP, we're able to get some major restoration on the ground. In 20 to 21, we've put in 13 miles of process-based restoration, which is the green lines on the map on the right. And then through different funding sources, through the SIA, OWEB, and then our supplemental agreements with NRCS through the RCPP, we either have them in hand or are working on them for 28 additional miles of BDAs to be implemented using the FIP and RCPP dollars. This is just a real quick kind of summary of what some of those BDA designs look like. If you're not familiar with the practice, here's a picture of an example on 30 Mile, which is a major steelhead tributary for us. But this is outlined in multiple plans. It's process-based restoration. It's really a major strategy that we're trying to push. With that, start talking about that many miles of restoration, trying to figure out how to certify that and monitor that effectively with such a small staff. We have a conservation innovation grant with NRCS, trying to develop a tech note that explains how to certify 16 different NRCS practices that we typically use, such as BDAs, suppression management, fence. So again, with the goal to reduce the amount of time out there certifying practices. So yeah, I've gone over the contracted services and our technology, and then this is really where our partnerships really hit home. So we have some contracted services available through the strategic implementation area. We basically have staff are completely hands off, other than some helping a little bit here and there when it comes to monitoring. We just don't have the time. And so through the SIA and FIP, also partnerships with ODF&W for their fish sampling, pretty much all the monitoring is now in a different shop. We also, RCPP pays for some multispectral surveys using drones. So that's kind of how we've shifted gears on our monitoring program. So that was really quick, just kind of how we've changed once following the partnership being successful, and then being able to leverage other funds with other funding sources. So as a district manager, I'm really lucky to have a really good team, motivated, and really believe in the mission. And in the John Day Basin, we have amazing partners all across the board. And then that long range planning, it's been happening for a long time, and it's been nice to see it come to fruition, where we have the money to do landscape scale projects. But with that comes, you have to be innovative or adapt with your program. So apologize if that was too fast, but I think that's all I had. Does anybody have any questions?
So if people have questions for either of the two speakers, now's the time to raise your hand.
I'm going old school with my hand raising. Will this work?
Marganne, please.
I don't have a Zoom account. I have yet to figure it out. So I don't necessarily have a question as much as a comment. First, Karen, I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. If you ever get nervous, you can do the old imagining. I'll just put myself in the category. Think about me in my underwear, or as you might, Justin can tell you recently, me trying to deal with a ranch gate. That's a funny one too. Just picture me doing that. It was great information. I'd like to talk to you offline about some of the early slides you had. about the flooding impacts. So looking forward to that. And Herb, I am very much interested. I'd love your visuals, and I'd like to learn more how that's going. How you created those. They're very cool, and it was very effective. So I wanted to pass that on, and I just give you kudos for excellent job of leveraging the funding and opportunities you've got. So thank you. That was
Thank
it.
you.
And I'd like to ask both of you if you wouldn't mind sending the PowerPoint so we can share them on the website.
Sure.
Good job. Anybody else want to raise their hand, either electronically or otherwise? Okay, well, I guess we will call it a day then, and don't forget to come back tomorrow when we have the Working Lands Forum and also the Advocacy Forum. So we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We'll open at 8, but it won't start until 8:30, so come at your convenience.
Thanks, everyone.
you
It was great
all.
seeing you. Yeah, see you tomorrow.
Yep, bye-bye.
Thanks, Jan.
Bye all.
Bye.